thumbs up if that's on the screen. Perfect. Is that on? Everyone can see that? Great. So let me pop that down. Yeah, great. So we're working. So I'm going to start with this. I feel that everybody has felt this. If you are transitioning or you're new into the high-tech world, I've never seen a job description on LinkedIn or Glassdoor that doesn't say I need experience. And it's kind of crazy if you like think about it, right? Because the person that's interviewing you, somebody had to take a chance on them. And so I hope in this webinar, I can like, take away that myth that you need to have experience to get an entry-level job in marketing or customer success or sales, in high tech, because you really don't. And what I want to show in this webinar are the following. I want to work on the mindset for job hunting, because candidly, like, it took me a couple of months to get into high tech, to understand the high tech world, to decide that for me, sales was what I wanted to do. And I know that can be excruciating. Like, I feel you. It can be a very, very frustrating period. You reach out to companies and they just ghost you. It can be very, very, very annoying, and sometimes feel very grueling when you get to the end of a stage and then, like, you just don't hear, or you don't get through to the next round. And I totally feel that, because I was there. And I think that everybody is there whenever they're looking for a job, especially a first job. So I'm going to cover mindset. I'm going to cover some job hunting tips. And I'm also going to cover just some different stages of the interview, and some, like, one of the stages for marketing, for customer success, and for sales. And actually, like anything, like even if you are going to be a coder in high tech, they all require a home assignment. And so I'm going to cover some of that as well in this webinar. So this is the first point. Like, and if you take nothing else from this webinar, it's the following. It's the argument of like quality versus quantity. And so when I was first starting out, I would spend a lot of time researching companies and then sending out job interviews. And what I learned was that sometimes they just don't reply. And so the overarching theme of what I'm going to talk about is quantity. And this comes down to like sales. And I should point out here, like, I have a background in sales, but I have made this presentation as general as possible to cover like job hunting. But of course, if I'm bringing examples, it's going to be mostly from like the sales world. And something I've learned from the sales world is that it's all about numbers. So, the more things you apply to in the top of your funnel as jobs without being emotionally attached to the company, because that's like happened to me. I'm like, oh my God, this is the perfect company. I love the website. I love the product. And then I get, into like writing this whole long, essay about why I should come to the company. And then they just like don't reply. So what I do is quantity. I try and send my CV out to as many people as possible. And then as every single stage goes, you get less and less until you get to the final. And candidly, over like a 5.5 month period, I went on like 250 interviews. So it really is like a job. Finding a job is a job. So I just want to reiterate that with a little story. So again, like I have this company in mind. They were like a dream company for me. They were, for me personally in sales, I wanted a remote first company that was, and this is good for you guys to think about when you're thinking about what you want to do. I wanted like a remote first company in that worked in sales.
So you've got everything ready.
There. A remote first company in sales that worked EMA hours. EMA being like Europe hours. And so I spent all this time like crafting up the perfect, the perfect CV specifically for this company, and like hours spent writing an essay, and then they didn't reply. And so like I learned very harshly, like not to get emotionally attached and just like send out send out my CV. The best place to do that, by the way, is on Glassdoor and LinkedIn. Again, going back to like, I think you should be sending out as many as possible. And so I would literally go over here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I would type in at the top bar SDR. You know, you can see last week, 463 jobs were posted. And I would just click easy apply. And I would just send out my CV, and again, with very little thought to like customizing the CV, I wouldn't even on this stage read what it's about. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. I would do the same on LinkedIn. You can go on LinkedIn jobs and do the same thing over here. You just type in SDR, and you could even, there's a whole lot of things up here. Like you could say it's remote, what type of job you want, the company size, and it's the same over here. Glassdoor is great, by the way, because you can, in later rounds, when you start doing your research on the company, you can actually look at like what's on the other side. Can I get a one in the chat who's heard of Glassdoor, by the way? Is this new to everyone, or is this like standard in Israel to use? You guys want to put a one in the chat, so I know that you guys use this, because it's free, it's great, and LinkedIn as well. And then kind of on that point, what I would do is I would send out a lot of these CVs, again, without properly reading it over, because in the first round, you don't know if they're going to even respond to you. And so it's about, again, sending out as many as you can. And why would I say, like, what does that do? What is the process over here? So a lot of you have experience, right? We were in the beginning, we were talking about this, like you've had experience at working, you know what a job is. And when you're getting an entry-level job in HiTech, you know, and I'll recommend some courses or some places where you can take courses, but you really only need like maybe 10 hours of training, if that, to do an entry-level job in marketing, customer success, or sales proficiently. I know that's like, wow, you don't need 2 years of experience, especially when you don't have it. So what you really need is interview skills, and that comes from doing interviews. So I said in the beginning that like I spent 5 months going over, I think I did like 287 interviews, like, and I would apply to companies that I didn't even like. And that's the point I want to make over here. It's because it's not about getting to that dream company, because you don't have control over that. What you have control over is your interview skills. And that comes with volume, like time under the bar. You know, the more interviews you do, the less uncomfortable you're going to be, the less scared you're going to be, the better you're going to do at home assignments, the better you're going to be able to articulate why you're moving into the HiTech. You're going to be able to have certain questions in your mind, like you'll be able to predict what they're saying. All of that stuff just comes from doing lots of interviews. And so when I would go into an interview, especially like, and we're going to cover the stages of an interview and when I would actually start doing research on a company, but I got offers from companies that I didn't even like. I didn't believe in their product, which, by the way, if you're in sales, it's very important. You have to have conviction. If you're a front facing, even in customer success, you really have to like what you're going to be doing for 9 hours a day. But you can apply to companies that you don't even care about, because you get the interview skills and you kind of learn, you get a benchmark for like what the questions are going to be asked or what the assignments are. And so that's why quantity is way better than quality in the beginning. And so I can't stress that enough. Like if you take one thing from this, it's like send out your CV and don't be emotionally attached to them replying. So that was a very important point. So I use Glassdoor and LinkedIn. I messed around with some Facebook groups, like there's some Facebook groups, but really this was the most efficient way of doing it. Like, as you can see last week over here, in the last week, there was 463 new jobs for SDR alone. So like if you send out a lot of CVs, you're going to get a lot of interviews. And I would send a cover letter with that. I'm going hope this works. Let's see if I can open that up.
Jason, sorry to interrupt. Did you apply to junior?
Yes. So I'm coming up to, like, you know, at the end of this year, I'm going to apply for an account executive role, which is, and thank you for asking the question. You guys are welcome to throw in questions. I appreciate that, Shirelle. So at the end of the year, I'm going to apply for an account executive job, which is a, you know, like after you're an SDR, then you become an account executive. And I am going to do this exact same process. And so you can use this at any level, you know. Obviously it gets easier as you have a track record of experience behind you. But if you're transitioning into HiTech, again, like, if you have maybe 10 hours of training, you can do most entry-level jobs in HiTech. I'm not talking about coding, but definitely things in marketing, in, you know, and again, I'm going to go over like what courses you can take, but on the internet, information is decentralized, so you can learn anything. I just want to show you, so what I would do is my process for, like, I'm going to go over my process now of like sending out, how I was able to send out so many job applications, you know, see my CV so many times. So I would go onto the, you know, onto Glassdoor, LinkedIn, and send it out. And I would use a template like this. This is my personal template with my experience. All of this.
Jason, sorry, can you maybe make it bigger?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see if
I have an opportunity to read.
Yeah. It's not about what's been read. Like, this is what I used, and you can see it's relevant to me. But so I would use a template when they ask for a cover letter. It's good to send a cover letter because it's hard for people to judge you off of like a blank CV. You know what I mean? Like, it's very non-human. So you have one other chance to be kind of like human, and that's to send like a cover letter. Now, as I said before, I didn't customize my cover letter. What I would do is I would say, "Dear team at Jolt, I'm writing to express my interest in the SDR position. I love what Jolt is doing to help, you know, people in Israel find jobs in tech. Your solution is changing people's lives." And then I would write something along the lines of that. It'll be like 2, 3, or 4 lines about what I like about the company. So, you know, I would, while I was sending my CV, I would go on the site and just look at like their solution in general and what they do. Again, very high level, not like, you know, who do they serve or anything. And then I would,
even if you didn't like the company?
Yes. And I want to thank you, Alex. I want to re-emphasize that again, because I think it's a super, super, super important point. And it's like, if you leave this webinar, it's with this. Everyone in here you don't need work experience. You need interview experience, because an interview is like, it's an art. To be able to interview, someone's coming in front of you and you have to put your best foot forward, that's an art. And so if you apply to companies that you don't really want to be at, you're getting that skill at the same time without being like really scared, oh my God, this is my dream company. And so that's why I'm emphasizing go on interviews with companies, every company, any company, because it also allows you to, like, you know, I went on interviews in massive companies with 10,000 people and companies with 7 people. And you can really get an understanding of like what the salary options are and like how the role is different, because a junior role in a 7-person company is very different to a junior role in a 10,000 person company. And the more interviews you go on, you're going to know that. So that's like a super, super important point. And part of being able to go on so many interviews is to like systemize it as much as possible. And one of the ways of doing that was having a cover letter like this, where like all of this over here, it doesn't matter what's read. You're going to have it in the slides anyway, so you can read over it. But all of this, I never rewrote any of this. I would always just change the top 4 or 5 lines. That way I could send out more CVs and go on more practice interviews. So I hope that was clear in that. Let's see if I can move on to the next. Yes, okay. So the interview stages. So now when you start going on lots and lots of interviews, again, quantity versus quality, you're going to start learning like how the stages work. And for all jobs in Israel, like the way that it works, again, I know I'm from sales, but I'm like really arching it out from people that I've spoken to, peers. The way it works in Israel is that you will send out your CV, either on Glassdoor or LinkedIn, and it could be like 2 or 3 weeks later that they call you, and you'll just get this call from this HR person, and they'll just like call you up, you know, on your phone, and that call is the first stage. It's the HR call. And in that interview, you have to understand that no matter what role you're going to, the HR person is just reading off of a job description, and they just want to know, oh, like, you know, do you speak English? You know, do you, like, all of the stuff that's said on the job description is exactly what they're going to say. It's going to be a very high level interview. Like, they're not going to ask you any questions about your previous experience. And again, because if you go on a lot of these, if you do a lot of interviews, you'll learn to pass the stage very quickly. It's the most annoying stage for me because I'll be in the middle of something and I'll get a call from somebody and it's like an unregistered number and I have to pick it up because it may be a company. The next thing you're going to have is that call. They're going to schedule with you a meeting with some sort of team manager. And that is going to be like a deeper stage where they go over your history, which again, doesn't have to be with sales. It can also be like your history as a person. And that's when you put your first step forward. I'm going to go into more of these things in a second that are like more deeper each stage. But the point I'm trying to make again is going through the stages as many times as you can with companies, as many companies as possible is very beneficial. So in that stage with that team manager, now in this case, I'm going to have to be very specific with sales because I went on a lot of like SDR entry level interviews. But again, they just ask you about like your life in the first stage and, you know, why you want to be in sales and whether you understand the role.
Jason?
And then in that interview, they also tell you once if you get through to the next one, they'll email you through some sort of home assignment. I'm going to go over that in a second. And then you do the home assignment. And then the next interview, which is the fourth interview, is you review the answers for the home assignment. And again, this is for marketing, customer success. This pattern is just the pattern in Israel that they follow. So the whole pattern could be like, you know, a month and a half, literally, until you get a job offer or you get, that's why you have to go on many because, you know, even if you like this company and it's going well, it could be like a month and a half. It's crazy, but that's how it is in Israel. These companies, like they don't always work fast. So then
Jason?
you'll have
Sorry.
is there a question?
Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Is SDR got to be an entry-level job?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much for asking that. In my team, there's a guy that is 50 and a guy that is 23. It definitely does not have to be an entry-level job. And that's the same, like I know people that just enjoy being an SDR. An SDR is like, you know, fundamentally it's the first line. It's like, it's qualifying whether the prospect is a good fit for the solution of the company. And so you only, as an SDR, qualify the prospect, and then you pass that contact on to an account executive, and that's the person that actually does the sale. And so I do know people that just like being an SDR and they enjoy the first conversation. SDR, I can speak about it at the end, like because I'm making the presentation very broad for everybody, but I can speak about my experience being an SDR. But thank you for the question. We can discuss that more at the end. So once you have a review with the home assignment, then you'll meet with like the head of a department, and then afterwards you'll have another HR interview, and then finally, if all is good, you'll get an offer. And it usually follows the steps. So like whatever you're applying to, expect it to take a month and a half, and expect there to be, you know, these stages. And again, when you're going on many, many different interviews, you're going to get through parts of these stages, and eventually you'll be able to predict them and handle them easier. Okay, I want to go over this is going to be the only part of the presentation that is very sales orientated, because I did a lot of home assignments for sales. However, I think that the method that I'm going to show you will be useful for everybody in whatever field you're in. Because once you go on a lot of interviews and you do a lot of home assignments, eventually you will discover the pattern. And so I'm going to show you the pattern for entry-level SDR. And from that, you'll be able to like identify and just know going into your interviews that all of the home assignments are essentially the same. Again, the more interviews you do, the more home assignments you do, the easier it's going to become. So for sales, they always ask you to identify, is there a question? For sales, they always ask you to identify a relevant company. And I think that's the same in marketing as well. And then they ask you to find 3 relevant persona in the company. So 3 people that this company solution, you know, would work for, or like are the targets in the company. And then how would you find these people? So like what technology would you use? Like Sales Navigator, Zoom Info, Lucia. Then write a simple email and cold call, like a simple email template, cold call email, kind of like, you know, which again, if you do a lot of, I have some examples in this Airtable that I'm going to show you. So I don't want to spend too much time on this particular example because there's a lot of people here that are not in sales. And then the last one is a cold call practice. Okay, at this point, I want to show you this resource, which will be available for everybody in here afterwards. This is Airtable. It's kind of like Monday. It's a free tool that allows you to gather up all of your, you could say all of your thoughts, all of your documents in one place. And so you're going to have this slide available, and it's going to have like a lot of reference things that you guys can take afterwards. The thing I'm going to focus on right now is home assignment examples for sales and marketing. These are actual copy pastes without the company names of sales, actual sales assignments that I've had, and actual marketing assignments that my fiance kindly also gave us. So you can read through these. Again, if you do enough of these, you'll discover like a pattern. They all kind of like ask the same thing. And if I remember afterwards, I'll also add a little sheet over here so you can see like a cold call template, which is what I used when I was also doing that. I just didn't add that as well. I'm going to go over this. Let me just see what the next thing is over here on our little presentation. Right. Okay, so I'll use this opportunity quickly to tell you a little bit about this document. So it goes into the point that's on that stage. It doesn't matter whatever job you're going to in HiTech. And it's the quote that's on that piece of paper. It's by Warren Buffett. It's the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself. And so I'm a big believer in continuous learning. And so the more that you learn, the more valuable you become. So even if you are going into an entry-level job, you should never stop learning. So these resources over here are things that you can take and look at after the presentation. There's a couple of people on YouTube that I really recommend you follow. They're serial entrepreneurs, and they talk about how they hire. So it's like business owners who are talking about what they want in people. Over here, there's some questions that I have found that people ask me a lot in interviews, or that you can ask in interviews. So like if you're speaking to an HR person, a good question to ask in any department is like, how many people are you hiring for in this department? You know, was there a budget assigned for this role in your company? then you'll see some of them are like very sales orientated, and some of them are like good questions to ask, you know, at any type of job that you're ever going to. These are good questions to ask in interviews. And you can have a look at those and use those in your interviews. These are resources. A lot of them are sales dependent, like some things in sales, but also really good to look at. You guys can have a look at that. That's just stuff that I found interesting from LinkedIn. So that's that. And then over here, this is also very specific for sales, but I think is something is good. It's just like techno jargon, like sales jargon stuff. And I'm sure there's like marketing stuff as well. So every time I come across a word that I don't know, like an acronym, I add it in a document so that I learn these words. But this is the most important thing that I wanted to show you. So besides the message that I want you guys to take, apply to many, many different jobs so that you can go on many different interviews so that you can get the experience. You're going to be getting a lot of interviews if you do that. And you need to keep track of those, especially if like, you know, there's this random person that's calling you without a caller ID. You're not going to remember who this number is. You know, like, again, the HR person calls you. It's usually about a 10-minute conversation. No matter if it's marketing, customer sales, if you're going into software development, you always have this random HR person on your phone without a caller ID calling you. So when I was, what I would do when someone called me, or let me go back a bit. I apologize. When I would apply for a job on LinkedIn or on Glassdoor, I'd put the name of the company over here. And then I would put the role that I was applying for over here. And this is very, very important. I would put the copy of the job description over here. So I actually did one. I don't know why it's not opening up right now. But this is actually, I was just on, when I was making this, I saw that there was one. So I did it kind of like manually over here. But that's what I would do. I would copy paste. And again, you can use the overarching theme over here is that I recommend you keep some sort of database of the jobs that you've applied to, because it'll make it easier to track what stages you are at, because you're going to be speaking to like a lot of companies if you send out a lot of CVs. And I think the best way to do it is, again, using Airtable. It's free and you can copy paste and use this template. But again, I would have the company name, I would have the position I'm hiring for, and then a copy paste of the job description. Because then when like, so usually as an HR person, when like, you know, when they call you, you can just like read off of the job description and while she's talking to you and asking the questions, because it's going to be a very basic interview. It's only like 5-10 minutes, and it's really just to schedule. It's really just to schedule you with a manager. And then I would also, yes.
At this stage, is it acceptable to tell the HR person that you need to be ready? Like, can I have 10 minutes or can you call me back?
Yeah, so because they really just cold call you out of the blue, like in sales.
Yeah.
So it depends. Like that's a really good point. Thank you for raising that. Sometimes they would call and they would say, hey, is this a good time to talk? And I wasn't by my computer. And so I would say no, even if like I could take the call, I would say no, because when I would take a call, my favorite thing to do with HR people was like, I have my phone on loudspeaker right in front of me. And then I would just be typing away the notes, because the HR person usually gives some kind of rundown of the company. She's like, oh, okay, fine. Yeah, I'm going to schedule you. Yeah, in whatever, at Jolt, we do X, Y, and Z. And then you can ask them a few questions. It's usually a 10-minute. You can be like, oh, who's the person I'm going to be interviewing with? What's their name? And I'm writing all this down. So I would only take calls if they called me and they had to speak now. Then obviously, like, I would just take the call and try and remember what they said later. But the easiest thing is if you say, please call me back in like 10 minutes or half an hour, when you know you're going to be in front of your computer. Airtable does work on your phone, but it's much easier if you put it on your computer. And that way I could also keep track. So then I would have the HR person's name. And I would say, I always put also the date that I applied. That's how I know that these things take like a month and a half. Like for all the companies that I went to, most of them it took at least a month to get through all of the interview stages. And I would write over here, like, when's the next day and date that we're meeting. And then when I did get a home assignment, I would put it over here. And I was specifically looking for a remote job. So again, I told you I was applying to everything, but I would only focus on sometimes I would indicate over here, I like this company. You know, again, I did a brief reading of it, but I'll just be like, oh yeah, I like this company. And if it was a remote company, I would say yes, because I wanted like a hybrid remote. That was important to me. So again, I would take jobs, even if the job was like, you have to be in the office every day at this time. I would still go on all the interviews knowing that like, this wasn't the place for me because I wanted the interview experience, which is, again, a very important topic that I've been stressing over here. So that's that. So it's important to keep some sort of record of like where you are. And then sometimes when they would say no, I would just put them like, I have like a decline below, and then I would add them below. So if they never answered me after like 3 or 4 months, I would move them from the top down, or if they said no, I would put them, I would put them below. So that's on that. This is the point, again, I want to again re-emphasize, like you really want to be, the more you learn, the more like valuable you are. And so like even in an entry-level job, you want to know as much as you can about your role, and also just about how companies are run, and really about like how you affect the profit of a business, you know, because at the end of the day, a company is just, any company is a group of people that are coming together and trying to make profits. That's like the idea of businesses. And it's good to look at it very simply as like, where do I fall in that system? Like whatever you're going to be doing, you're going to affect the bottom line in some way. And so the more you invest, the better. And so there's a couple of things that I recommend you doing. Like what LinkedIn Learning is fantastic. I really recommend that you do courses on LinkedIn Learning. And also if you're in sales, specifically Sales Impact Academy, SIA has got some awesome stuff. So the point is like, never stop learning. Like, you know, there's so much information out there. I trained myself to be a videographer. And again, like any entry-level job in tech, most of the time you're going to need maybe 10 hours of training. And so saying that, you may as well buy a 10-hour course and like learn whatever the entry-level job you're applying for is. Or even if it's like I was looking now, there's a course, like 12-hour course for account executives. And I'm totally going to buy that course and do that course, because I know that when I get to the interviews, even if they didn't feel I had the relevant experience, I would be able to like talk about the role and talk about what I'm going to do. And so while you're interviewing for the particular role that you want, I recommend you buy knowledge, buy courses, and continue to learn and improve yourself, because it will make it easier on the interviews. And also like, you could even say that, hey, like I may not have the relevant experience, but I'm doing this course right now, and I do X, Y, and Z in this role. This is what I plan to do. That's also fine. And so that's also something I want to stress. At this point, yeah, I have time for questions. I can go into other general topics, but I'm interested to hear like if anyone has a question, want to come off mic. I'm happy to like answer very specific questions.
Can I ask what is the most bizarre question you've been asked in an interview? Like in Israel, I know they ask question like, how many windows does Azrieli Mall has? What is dragon? What animals, you know, dragon is made of? Some bizarre questions. I don't know how to approach it.
I love that question. That's funny. I saw like a meme recently. It was like a cartoon of like two people sitting in like at a desk interviewing, and the question was, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And there was like a little thought bubble over the candidate's head, and he was like, 5 years from now, I see myself in your chair, but asking better questions, but asking better questions. I've been asked some and this goes to like when you go on a lot of interviews, you really realize like there's so much you like when I think back, I said to you guys, I went on like 287 interviews. Like I applied to a lot of places. And so I would get to a company and the interview questions that they ask at a 10,000 person company versus like some random CEO that I would like wait 45 minutes for because he was late. And the questions that he would ask me are very different. And so that's just like very helpful to like go and interview at different types of companies. Again, I would only start really thinking about whether I liked a company after I did the home assignments. And I'd be like, hey, do I really believe in this product? And that's something I want to maybe go back and just, and also infiltrate. Like I'm advocating for you to go on many interviews. But I am saying that like, try and go to a company that you really believe in their product. So of the people that give you offers, try and accept an offer where you have conviction in like what the product is and what it is that they're doing. So like, yeah, I remember there was this company that I knew, like for me personally, I'm never going to work at a Forex company. I just don't believe in that, or like at a company that's like, you know, doing something kind of like, like that, where it could be nefarious in that way or even illegal. But I did go on an interview with that just to see, oh, what was this like? I knew for me, for example, that I didn't want to work in a call center. But I went to two call center interviews. And of course, like the types of questions they asked, there was like, you know, you'll get a sense of like what the culture is. Because I told you, like, there's a very clear list outline of like how companies like to do things. Where is it? Yeah, there's a very clear outline of like how companies like to do things. And I went to like, for example, a call center, and like, so after the 10-minute HR call, they immediately like invited me in for an interview. I spoke to like the team manager, and on the spot, they offered me like a job. And because I'd gone on many interviews before this, I was like, I can't understand the company culture. And so I was able to ask questions like, oh, what is your turnover rate for people that work in this role? And it's like, okay. You know, they're kind of like excited. There's a lot of people that like have a high turnover rate. So there's kind of like things like that, where like when you go on many interviews, you kind of like also learn what a good company culture is, which is, again, a business is just an organization of people together. But what binds people together is the founder's vision, like the CEO's vision, and also the way that the company is structured. So you can get a really good feeling of, when I used to go on interviews, so a lot of interviews were virtual, but sometimes when you get to like, especially the head of department interview, I don't know, it might be different now that COVID's over, that they might ask you to come in. Usually companies don't ask you to come in for the first few interviews, but I would always make sure to come a half an hour early, and I would like come in and I would start conversations with different people in the company, just to like understand what they thought of the company, you know, besides reading Glassdoor, because you can also get very clean, kind of like accurate views about what really goes on in a company. So I think that's kind of like some important points. Does anyone have any other questions? Because it's kind of like we can expand on other stuff here if you guys any questions. Yes, please.
So I have a couple.
Yes,
regarding what you just said, company culture. What would be your tips to try to find that out, either from like talking to them when you're there, or from outside, or like what questions would you ask? Like, where would you look?
So I think one of the questions I have on the Airtable that I like to ask for company culture is, if I'm interviewing someone that's the head of a department, oftentimes it's because they've been there for like 4 or 5 years. That's a very high level question to ask, and it's a great question to ask. You know, whenever the interviewer says, okay, do you have any more questions? Never say, I don't have any more questions. I've left some questions there. Always have a repertoire of questions that you can ask. And that's a great question to ask. You can ask straight out, like, what's the company culture like here? or a sneaky way of asking that is, you know, I noticed that you've been here for 5 years, you know, what's kept you in the company, you know, or tell me a little bit more about, you know, what makes this place special. Because at the end of the day, you have to understand that an interview, you see, we go into interviews, especially when I didn't have any interview skills, you go in there thinking, please take me, please take me, please take me. When actually like an interview is seeing it both sides, like you're interviewing them at the same time. And that makes it much easier if you're going to interviews, not if you go to many interviews and you don't really like, you don't care specifically about this interview in this company. It makes you less outcome independent, which means you're able to actually have that kind of like, oh, okay, they're interviewing me, but I'm interviewing them. And, you know, I found that like, you know, the first 2 companies that I worked in Israel were very fast paced, like small startups. And there's a very different company culture to when like a company is in like the startup building phase versus like when a company is like, you know, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 people. Usually in like smaller companies, it's very fast paced and your role is, you don't really have a really defined role. And it's a very flat organizational structure. So it's like, this person does a little bit of like, you report to this person, you report to that person for that, you report to this person for that. You know, you take on a whole lot of stuff. Stuff doesn't even have like a system, and it can be very chaotic. And it was fun when I did it for my first 2 jobs. I actually moved to this particular role because they provide lots of training. Like for me, you know, again, some people, there was a question before about staying as an SDR. That's totally fine. I think for me, I see myself as like one day wanting to either have my own business or be like a manager of a department. And that means that I need to gain skills. And so I was attracted to the company that I'm in now because they offer such a diverse, like they you know, they invest in their employees. That's really a good point of customer culture. You know, a customer culture is good if you can ask them, like, oftentimes it will say on the job description, like, we have an employee budget for self-development. I think that's very important for a company to invest in its employees. And so when I'm, that's, I guess, something that was attractive to me. It's like, and if you go to a larger company, you're oftentimes gonna get more of the, what they call tech stack. You know, like if you're in marketing or sales or customer success, you're gonna get all of the software that makes all of those things easier. Whereas if you're in like a smaller company, they don't have a budget for that. And there's going to be kind of like, you know, your role isn't going to be as defined. But you also then have an opportunity, if you work really, really hard, to advance quicker, because as the company grows, there are going to be new places to fill, and they're most likely to promote within. So if like, you know, like with my experiences like an SDR, I could go now to a smaller company and scale the sales team if I wanted to, because I've been there, done that kind of thing. And companies look for that. So it depends like where you want to go and you kind of like understand what your vibe is, again, by going on lots of interviews and like interviewing with like small startups, you know. That was a good question. Do you have another question, Alex?
Yeah, like more generally, what would be a couple of tips that you have generally for research about a company before I, you know, take them seriously?
Sure. So again, I don't recommend you do any research besides the couple of lines that you write on the cover page that you send. You know, I really, really wouldn't recommend you, like, again, because I had some companies, I have a list of dream companies that I want to work at. And when I started applying for jobs, like, it's been so long, like researching the company, reading everything there is on their website, their entire blogs, kind of like all for nothing. The way that I like to research a company after I've gone through, like when I'm at the home assignment stage, where now I actually have to research the company, which sucks if you don't like the company, but still interesting because you learn a different industry. Like I'm not really interested, for example, in like cloud security, but a lot of companies I applied to happen to be cloud security. And so like I learned a lot about cloud security. That's the stage that I would start interviewing a company, and specifically for company culture, again, listening to podcasts by the founder, very, very good way. If I really like a company, and I mean, like I did the home assignments, I already learned about the company, and now I'm interviewing with the head of department. And again, this is a company that I have conviction in their product. I like what they're doing for the world. I'm going to try and search that. I'm going to try find content by their founders on their LinkedIn page, podcasts that they've been on. Just type their name, the CEO's name in Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. I'm going to look at TechCrunch. I'm going to look at any blogs that they've written. And you kind of like get the overall feel, like when you go onto the job description page and they have like a whole section about like, what their values are. Like, if, oh, wow, this company stands for something. They have like deep values. This is the kind of people that they hire, whereas like you might come to a company and like, there's nothing about, like, if they don't write anything about their company culture, then that's a sign that there really isn't a company culture. And it's an interesting thing because like, it's very ethereal company culture, like this company sells X thing to Y clients. It's very easy to outline, but a company culture is very ethereal. You really have to like, you feel it. And oftentimes I'll add to that. I just finished listening to a book by Elon Musk about SpaceX and Tesla. And one of the things that was interesting in that book that I found quite fascinating was he was able to attract the best talent in the world. And he didn't necessarily pay them the most, and he overworked them because like, he's doing crazy things. He's reinventing the car industry and the rock and the way that space travel works. But he was working, like, for example, SpaceX, they're working on a very, very big, grand mission. And so oftentimes, like, companies have better cultures if they're tackling, like, if they look like Jolt, like, I'll just take Jolt, for example. Like, if you're trying to change the way education is done or the way people enter into high tech, and you have like a really big mission. So those kind of companies tend to have better cultures because they get people that are more mission aligned. Are there any more questions? I'm loving the questions over here. They're really very thoughtful.
Can I ask another question?
Absolutely.
My last one. Can I ask about the salary negotiation?
Sure.
How do you approach it?
I recommend you read a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a book about negotiations, which will help a lot. I've included in the resources section a document, like a website that says the average salary of whatever it is you're applying to. It might be different a little bit if you have some previous experience. Which, if anyone here wants to give a personal example about them transitioning into high tech, I'm happy in the final minutes to like answer that particular question. But specifically to your question, you can Google that. Like I actually have two websites, two Israeli websites that kind of like give ballpark figures, because it is important to give the right figure. You don't want to say like it's different for every industry. And knowing, oh, hey, like my value in this particular job as a junior should be between X and Y means that you're more powerful in the negotiation. So that's a really good question. Thank you. And if you look on the resources, I've included two websites where you could see like the average starting salary, the average like manager salary in that role.
Thanks.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you for raising that. I appreciate it. I will also say that this is my LinkedIn. You are more than happy to connect with me. Yeah. And by the way, when you are also doing your job searching, since no one else is asking questions, I'm kind of just like talking. But I'm as things come to my head, I'm also I'm just sharing. LinkedIn is like Facebook, except everything there is educational. And so like if you are, for example, in sales, like you should look for the sales influencers and follow their pages, because they'll give you a lot of great things. Like I will look for people who have, you know, tons of connections and follow them, connect with them. Once you get experience, by the way, like again, because I don't know individual people and what your particular story is, but once you have a track record of doing things, and you also have a network, and I didn't touch on this before, and it could be a whole entire section on itself, but you know, it's very classic saying, but it's like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so there are certain ways that once you're on LinkedIn, you know, if I really liked a company at this stage, I would, besides sending if I saw, for example, that they weren't hiring, but I really like this company and I have a job right now, I don't like, when I was like looking for a job, it was like COVID, I really needed a job. You know, there was a sense of desperation over there. But if you're like, I have a list of companies, for example, that are like, I really believe in their missions and like, I really want to work for their companies. And so I will spend my time doing a little bit of networking because I have the interview practice. Like I've done many interviews. I know what the role is. I've done the role, you know, so I'm at a different stage, and there might be some people here that are too. So, you know, when you know how to use LinkedIn, which you will, if you're in HiTech, you can go on, you know, find the head of X department and connect with them. You know, hey, John from, you know, like sales, I really admire what you wrote on LinkedIn. Like that was an important point. I think that SDR people sometimes miss that, and start a conversation with them. And then, you know, once you've talked about it, you can be like, hey, like, you know, I really love what your company is, what the mission is, what you guys stand for. I'm really inspired by that. I actually listened to this podcast by the CEO, and he touched on this very issue. I was wondering, you know, I see you're not hiring yet, but are you opening up any places for this particular position? You know, that's kind of like a longer play. You know, this is like more tactical. Like, how do you, you know, once you have the interview experience, that's why like I'm stressing, like, get the interview experience, like go on many interviews. But once you're in HiTech and you like start meeting people and you go to events and functions, you know, then you start knowing, oh, I know this person who like works in sales over here. And then, you know, that's a referral. Whenever you get a referral, it's always more important. Like if you can, again, because we're talking about how to get into HiTech, you may not have those referrals. But once you're in HiTech and you've been working in HiTech for a year, which by the way, this is another point that's off topic, but the average job stay in HiTech or in jobs is not like our parents. Like our parents, a lot of our parents, like they probably were in the same job for most of their lives. But for us, it doesn't pay to do that. Like every year you should be going on job interviews so you know what your worth is. And so you can either take that back to your company and say, hey, I got this offer. And every couple of years, unless you really, really believe in the company and you have like stocks vesting and you love the company, once you've reached a certain experience level, if you can't be promoted in that company, again, this is assuming that your goal is like you want to be earning more money and like, you know, again, I'm just, you know, and you want to be climbing the corporate ladder, the best thing to do is then to like jump to another company with all the experience that you've learned. But those are like different plays once you're in the world. Where this webinar is mainly talking about like you want to get into HiTech. How do you get into the club? You know, and that's just sending out many CVs. But once you're in there and you have the past experience, like people in the C-suite, they don't go on job interviews. They get headhunted. You know, like I'll make my fiance blush over here, but like she's been in like marketing for 10 years. People reach out to her all the time. Like, you know, hey, we see you've got this and this experience. Like, would you like to come for a job? That's sometimes, it's happened to me like 5 times, maybe. It's like people that like they post on LinkedIn, that have a LinkedIn presence. Like once you're in HiTech and you want to, you know, start posting about your experience in your job, you'll get people reaching out to you. It gets much easier. And again, I want to go back to this. I know it's hard in the beginning, guys. Like I was there. And that's why I'm saying, go, just go on many interviews, get the interview experience, because you already have the job experience. The job experience for entry level, again, it's like 10 hours. That's it. What you really need is the experience of like how to put your best foot forward in an interview and how to do home assignments. Like that's going to get you that's the 80-20 over here, you know. I maybe have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. If I see, I don't want to be respectful of people's time. If there's any other questions? Yes, I see.
Naomi.
Sada. Naomi, sorry.
I would like to hear what you think about diversity. Is it really a thing, or do they just say it, or like hiring people above, 30 years old, or people who don't live in Tel Aviv?
So that's a good question. I tell you, my first job in HiTech was working at a full stack software development house that sold software to other companies. And so I researched a lot of high-tech companies. And you know what? Out of the hundreds of high-tech companies that I researched, I only interviewed one person that was of color. So there is sadly still in Israel a lack of diversity in high-tech. And that's why companies like Jolt, and this is why I'm here today, are so important, because I think more people should have opportunities. It doesn't serve you to go into an interview if you are, older and think, oh, they're not going to hire me because I'm old, because there's nothing you can like do about that. Again, continuous learning, doing courses, sending out CVs, that's all in your power. Like when you're in the interview chair, you might get to the end. I got to the end of a lot of processes, and the interviewee said, like the manager said, listen, I love you. I would hire you, but I only have space for one person. And there was this other guy, and he had X, Y, and Z experience over you. It happens. Or like we closed the role because we ran out of money. The company decided to go in a different direction. There's so many factors that you can't control when you're interviewing. And so your age is one of those things. So
my age means more experience, and also it means that I've already done my career changes. I might stay longer. That's an advantage for a recruiter.
Exactly. And it's all about reframing. Perfect. Yeah. There's been a lot of shifts lately in the high-tech world about women and being pregnant, or women that want to start a family because like they're afraid, I can't say that I'm getting married, because they're going to be like, oh, well, she's going to go on maternity leave. And so things are slowly changing. Yeah, things are slowly changing in high tech. And again, I have a person in my company in the same role as me who is 50. He had years of experience in something else and decided, I want to go back to being an SDR, and he's an SDR that does inbound. Inbound is when people fill out a form and they're like, oh, I want to speak to this company because I have a problem. Outbound is like what I do, is where I go knocking on doors and trying to like find the people. But inbound is like, people come to you. So he does inbound as an SDR and he loves it, and he's 50. And we have, I have a guy with me who's like 23. So I don't think age should be a factor, especially there's a book, it's called So Good They Can't Ignore You. I can't remember who it's by. And candidly, I haven't read the whole thing. But really it puts in there that it doesn't matter about your age. But again, that's like once you're in high tech, the more you can develop continuous learning, the more you can invest in yourself. It doesn't matter on your age. The more that you can be a good individual contributor or a good manager of people, which by the way, if you have managerial experience, you don't need to go into like an entry-level job. There are lots of managerial jobs in high tech as well. I just can't give you more information on that because I'm not a manager yet. I'm an individual contributor. One day I'll make another presentation with Job. We can talk about that. But yeah, like I really wouldn't, it's all about reframing it. As you said, like, oh, I've done my career changes and, I love this company. I love what you guys are doing. I'm here for the long haul. Do we have any other questions? These have been fantastic questions, by the way. Cool. So I hope that you guys found this valuable, and I wish you luck on your journey. And again, like, go on many interviews and use that as an opportunity, because I think there are many places in high tech, and you will find it. And so I wish you guys like the best of luck. I answer any questions that you guys have. I asked that the Airtable be shared with you guys afterwards.
Yeah, I sent the link already here in the chat.
Yeah, so you'll have that there. And if I have time tomorrow, I will I have a document of like, as I mentioned, like with the home assignment, specifically for sales, there's the email templates. They just want you to write an email to someone, and then there's like, they always do a mock cold call. Again, very basic. They don't expect you in a junior level role to actually know the job. That's what I'm saying. Like, this 2 years of experience thing is like a lie. It's the interview experience that you need, not the job experience, because the job can be taught to you. Any entry level job, you need like maybe 10 hours. And so find whatever it is that you're interested in and buy a course on it. Like, I recommend, if you guys are looking at SDR, Sales Impact Academy is fire. It's great. I'm a big fan. You got to pay to play, buy the education. It's online, it's free, give you a leg up in the interview, and also mean that you'll have an easy onboarding experience because you already know what the job is, because you've done a course from somebody who's basically allowing you not to have to make the same mistakes they made because you're learning a course. So it's super important stuff there. Cool.
Thank you for your time, Jason.
Thank you very much.
Very much. It was really inspiring, and thank you for sharing your things that you learned from your personal experience. And thank you guys for participating and being so involved. I encourage you to send a friend request to Jason on LinkedIn, and to use all of the tips he gave you today. And good luck to everyone. Jason, good luck with your career development. Hope you will find your account executive.
You when you're a manager.
I'm learning. This is part of it. Like, part of being I get so much. I'm so honored to help people get into high tech, because it really is a life change. And for those of you that are doing it, like it really is beautiful. And I wish you luck on your journey. I hope it will be as fulfilling.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Jason.
Everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye. Good evening.